The last 2 decades has seen the greatest years of entertainment in human history. It's not even debatable in my mind. Every single medium has produced multiple masterpieces in various different genres, better than anything that's come before. Climate change or fate may determine the human race doesn't have long left, but at least in this department, the species is going out with a bang. 2 massive cornerstones of this success have been the insanely popular and profitable Marvel Cinematic Universe in the West, and the continued dominance and mastering of the craft by Shonen Jump in the East. We have hundreds of new masterpieces in the video game industry and the revival of old classics. More artists exist now than at any other point in history, and their skills only continue to rise, as now nearly everyone can see their work. Revolutions in sport brought about by multiple superstars, all cropping up in the same era, and perhaps most obvious of all, we have the most spectacular products to ever grace screens and the pages of books. The greatest live-action superhero TV show in Daredevil, the greatest show period in Hunter x Hunter 2011, the worldwide event known as Infinity War, the cultural phenomenon of Naruto, Bleach, One Piece, and now My Hero Academia, which itself seems to be a blending of the 2 worlds. This fusion has brought about a question in my mind though. What exactly are the differences between the typical Shonen Jump comic and Marvel? Or to put another way, how does the Marvel formula compare to the Jump formula? Many great YouTubers have written about how different heroes represent different ideologies and meta-narratives. Thus, there are some who believe that there is not actually such a thing as the Marvel formula. While I can understand that sentiment, especially because people often use the term pejoratively, I do believe that like Shonen, a common aesthetic exists within the MCU. We can begin to see what the core tenets of this aesthetic are by comparing where it's similar to the Shonen aesthetic and where it's different. Fortunately for us, besides what I've written about the Shonen aesthetic, we can also simply look at the Shonen Jump motto to understand the themes that pervade through all their works: friendship, effort, and victory. I submit to you, audience, what I believe to be the MCU motto: duty, wit, friendship. The bond all people share. Looking at the countries of origin, we can see where their priorities originate. America is a settler colony state, one that broke off from its mother country through force and expanded to control the entire continent. Japan is an island nation, which experiences natural disasters regularly, and has been crushed in the largest war to yet occur. Geography and history affect culture, and as a result, the establishments meant to appeal primarily to these masses will, of course, reflect its values. Something both nations hold in high regard is friendships. Strong bonds between people who aren't blood related are to be valued, not to say that the family doesn't play a central role. Far from it. Such a fact is taken as a given, so much so that the strongest of friendships is seen as equivalent to that familial bond. This may not seem like a big deal if you grew up in these cultures, but it shouldn't be taken for granted that this is the case. As well, there are a few places where a good friendship will take precedence over any familial relation. The idea that you can trust anyone that closely that isn't family hasn't been challenged that much on a cultural level throughout world history, and it makes sense that both places will develop this expanded tribe mentality. Surviving on the frontier is hard, and you'll want to become close to people who live near you, regardless of your religious or biological background, generally speaking. And anyone willing to help you do revolution is your friend. This, along with a little civil warring, is the origin of America's multiculturalist approach. Japan, in contrast, tends to see the whole island as one, which is more difficult than you would think, just ask the British. But generally speaking, that shared bond of braving the world and humanity's wrath together unites millions who call the territory home. This explains the prevalence of the turning the former enemy into a friend trope. It's what Japan wants. Sure, rivalries will persist, but it should all be for everyone's mutual benefit. Why then did I put friendship third on the list for Marvel, even though it's first for Japan? Well, putting the priorities in order, there are 2 things American culture values above positive relations with others. These are the virtues that made the Civil War inevitable and the creation of the atom bomb by the country a certainty. Jurassic Park is as American as it gets. You ever wonder why that phrase from the Jurassic Park movie is so famous here in the States?
I don't think you're giving us our due credit. Our scientists have done things which nobody's ever done before.
Yeah, but your scientists were so preoccupied with whether or not they could, they didn't stop to think if they should.
Well, blame the country's obsession with smartness. As Wes Cecile pointed out in his Myths of the American Mind series, Americans are consumed by their ideals of the intelligent person. This is expressed in Marvel's movies primarily through jokes, but also in how most conflicts are resolved. Very rarely do we see the enemy overwhelmed with pure power and self-confidence, as in Captain Marvel. 9 times out of 10, even if the hero is generally speaking a complete idiot, they'll usually still find a way to beat the opponent by combining their punching and kicking with a clever plan. This again can be traced back to the nation's origins in frontiersmanship and Revolutionary War. The US couldn't overwhelm Britain with force alone. More than allies, which could have just taken over the continent themselves after they helped chase out Britain, Americans needed their wit to come out on top. And a revolution itself is caused by breaking with conventional attitudes, a mark of wisdom or foolishness, which Americans tend to portray as 2 sides of the same coin in their media. Compare this with effort of the Jump motto. Even more so than the frontier life, surviving in a place like Japan requires constant effort. You can never give up, even when every single aspect of life becomes a challenge. It's one thing to live in tough terrain, and everyone values effort on some level. However, it's another matter entirely to live off limited resources while having to deal with other people who want your head. While that very landscape could change drastically at any moment, exploring and settling new lands always has a hint of adventure, and requires bringing back the elixir, so to speak. In contrast, integral to the Japanese mindset is perseverance. Growing into an individual versus joining the collective. The starkest difference between the two formulas, however, has to be the contrast between duty and victory. It may not seem like it when looking at the country's worst behavior, but the principle that the US holds in the highest honor is duty. On the surface, this can look the same as victory, since the heroes always win in the end. But Infinite War is a great example of why that's not the case. The reason they lost, and the reason they'll continue to fight, is because of duty, rather than seeking victory for their own sake. Others may quit, but not us. Thanos, on the other hand, did everything he could for victory. Why is this so? Why is the pursuit of victory at all costs seen as a bad thing, while duty is the one quality all the Avengers have? Even the team's name is in reference to this concept. But why does the idea grasp at the American psyche so much? It's no secret that the US loves its individualism and freedom, but absolute freedom for everyone is freedom for no one. And that is why a collectivist idea needed to form the core ideal for the country. Before the Civil War, the nation was referred to as these United States, but after it would forever be known as the United States. Don't get me wrong, I'm not a revisionist who thinks the Civil War wasn't clearly about slavery at the core. But ideologically speaking, the question of whether owning slaves is okay is a question of what do you owe a stranger. Why shouldn't you enslave someone if you can get away with it? Empathy isn't an answer, since empathy and slavery have coexisted for thousands of years, and still does in some parts of the world. For Americans, it's because you owe it to others, your fellow citizens at least, to fight for their freedom and happiness, just as they must fight for yours. While this doesn't always produce the best results, one of the last to end slavery, first to develop nuclear for example, it has managed to keep this resource-rich, individualist country together all this time. In contrast to Japan, who after always having to persevere, has a strong desire to not only survive, but come out on top, to see their vision of the future through. The greatest tragedies in Japanese media, from No Longer Human to the redemption of Aomine Daiki in Kuroko no Basket, are an examination of what happens to a person when they lose that fundamental drive to win, or are born without it. In pursuit of this ideal, Japan has done some horrible things of its own, but has done equally impressive, amazing, and world-changing things. It's not about one ideal being better than another, but rather where these ideals come from, and how and why they're mixing now. Will Marvel conserve or progress society? Marvel is presenting its concluding thesis with Endgame. Whatever happens, a new era shall begin, and with it new challenges and questions. The limits of duty have been reached, and it seems they may be ready to switch up the formula, if Captain Marvel is any indication. Shonen Jump though has had the same mantra for 50 years, and if humans survive that long, it will for 50 more. Personally, I like that staying power of Jump's motto. The only constant in the world is change, and the Jump motto actively encourages that change. Duty is an inherently conservative idea, and though the wit will advance technology, I doubt it will completely prepare us for the changes that such tech will bring. But so long as we hold hands together, see it through as one, we may just be able to avenge the fallen, and seize victory. Or perhaps that is what it meant to be an Avenger all along.